Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the All Rights Matter show. This is Sincere with Anon Radio Live, and we want to bring you an update on the Oregon situation, guys. We have Brandon Curtis on the line with us. Brandon, are you there?
I'm here. How you doing, Sincere?
All right, how you doing, Brandon?
Doing good. Tired, but good.
Okay, I understand that there's a ton of updates that we have to go over. I know there's a lot of folks out there that have a lot of questions. So we're going to be covering a few of the key topics right now. This is a progressing, ongoing thing, so I'm sure we'll cover more later. First of all, one of the first things I want to cover, just getting right to it, is the rally. The rally
Yes, sir.
was huge. I mean, the turnout was good, but I think even more important than the turnout was the energy that was at that rally. As a matter of fact, KOIN, is one of the affiliates of CBS. They actually had Brandon Curtis's name on the front page of their paper, their online paper, and it just goes to show the presence that's really out there in that community by the Idaho Three Percenters and Brandon's group, the Idaho Three Percenters, and the Pacific Patriots Network. So, can you tell us a little bit about that experience, Brandon, and the energy of that rally and how that's carrying over, and like what that's starting to affect?
Yeah, absolutely. The rally was awesome. We had an awesome turnout. We planned a rally for yesterday at noon, and what some of the citizens in Burns decided they were going to do is plan a counter protest against us at 11:30. So they were able to get over there, stage up before we got there in opposition, take over the courthouse lawn. Obviously, a planned event there. That's fine. We showed up. They probably had 75 people. I know the mainstream media says that we were outnumbered. However, early on we were because some of our people got there early. But I'll say we had 300 people that streamed in and out of there for our side on that rally. The energy was great. People were just coming together. It was also, it was surreal in a way because we were also there honoring Lavoie and everything else that was going on. At one point in time, in the middle of the rally, we had a long line of local ranchers and farmers with their cattle trailers, horse trailers, just lined up and down the street, coming through the rally, honking their horns, waving American flags. Local people did this to show that the local ranchers support what we're trying to do. They support us being there to support them. It was just amazing.
Yeah, and I think actually I saw that video. I mean, it was a long line of vehicles, and they were all honking their horns at the same time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and they all had like cattle trailers on, horse trailers. They had all their ranching stuff. They were towing it, getting it in a long line right in front of the courthouse, right where we were at.
Wow, that's yeah, that's incredible. And you know what? That just goes to show the level of support that's really in the community. Like you said, 75 people, maybe about 75 people came out to counter protest. And that's okay. Everybody has rights in America, and that's their right to do so. But there's, 300 something people standing up for righteousness, standing up for people that are standing up for the Constitution. And that's that's the main focus point. I actually wanted to comment on that a little bit. Last night, I'm not sure if you know everything about it or not, but I was on the airwaves with David Fry, and I know that's like probably one of the weirdest things ever. He's one of the last four people that are actually stuck there inside of the refuge, surrounded by the FBI. And for our listeners that don't know who David Fry is. So I was actually on the air with him last night, and what I thought was quite funny is before I got on the air, I had listened in for about, I don't know, maybe about 20 minutes or so, half an hour, and I listened to the callers that were coming through, and of course, you had the trolls coming through, and they were, saying just the craziest things whenever they, would get their little 10 seconds of fame on the air, if you will. And that's what some of the protesters, the counter protesters at the rally actually remind me of. The logic just doesn't match the seriousness of the situation. You have a lot of people hurling crazy insults, saying just the wildest things, but yet they don't want to focus on the constitutional factors that the people that are hardcore about this, the constitutional factors that everyone's talking about.
Right, right, and I didn't get to listen to that last night because we were traveling back home because we are home for a couple days. But I spoke to David Fry. I spoke to Sean Anderson up there. I spoke to him 2 nights ago in the middle of the night. My message to him, was that we're praying for him, and we are praying for safety for him and a peaceful resolution. But as Ammon said and made it clear, Ammon Bundy even said, and they have said that through this whole process, that this was never meant to be an armed standoff, in which I unfortunately somewhat turned into right now, and no one needs to lose their life. And I'll never condone somebody or discredit somebody, for standing on their convictions. I know that's what Alan's doing, but I just want to see that have a peaceful resolve, and those guys need to end that peacefully and deal with that. We don't need any more bloodshed. We've already seen that last week. That was a tragic and traumatic experience for so many people. We don't need to see that again.
No, we absolutely do not need to see that again. And I believe they did a good job also, as they were telling more patriots to come out there and to support. One of the things actually David was saying on air is, don't come out there, you don't have to come out there with your weapons. Just come out there with your numbers. Come out there, in mass numbers, and just stand in solidarity and support the situation, support the cause, because it's really standing up for yourself. And right. Explaining it in that way, I believe it turns that inner reflection, on for someone, and they can say, wait a second, maybe this is a just cause. If I'm not standing up for David, maybe I should stand up for myself.
Right. I mean, and we want to do so in a way that's not going to put anyone else in danger. And I understand the distrust there they have with the FBI. The FBI is telling them that they can, everyone's free to leave with the exception of one who has a warrant, who is going to have to answer those charges. And I understand the distrust because I know that several people were told they were free to leave before, and they were arrested. So I get why they're at a standstill right now and a stalemate, and it's really unfortunate that the FBI has taken such dramatic actions that have caused people to lose their trust. They're not transparent. We saw that with Lavoie. They want to release this video. As a matter of fact, we were on the show when that video came out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We watched that together, and you look at that video and the capabilities that unmanned aircraft has with that camera system. They released some pixelated, poor quality video that we know that unmanned aircraft has the ability to read license plates for 2-3 miles away. I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
So those are the transparency issues that I understand why Mr. Fry is concerned. I know they're asking for immunity. I don't know if that can happen or not, but I just wish for a peaceful resolve, and they need to get it. They need to. I'm not going to say he should. I don't know. I don't ever. I'm never going to put a guy down for setting on his convictions, but they got to get it resolved so those guys can come out there peacefully and in this one way or the other. In regards to coming to an agreement or answering to their charges, whatever that may be, but no more bloodshed.
Yeah, no, I agree. No more bloodshed. So let me ask you, while we're on the subject matter, what do you think, as far as those 4 that are up there? I mean, in your conversation with them, is it, the tone of it more, maybe you guys should surrender, answer to the charges, and continue your battle from there? Or is it, what is the context of your conversation with them?
Well, I'll be very honest about how my context goes because I'd say this. I would say this to anybody. You need to. They need to. They need to think about it this way. We could use patriots. We have more use for patriots. We could do far more good with alive patriots than dead patriots. We already have one dead patriot with Lavoy. We don't need any more. And if those guys, whether it would be answering to the charges to get them out there safely, so they could fight this out here with us. Just no more violence. And I know we've gotten a lot of feedback in regards to that. Saying that they should fight and stand. And I get that, but you got to pick a battle you can win, and they're not in a battle they can win right now, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that I agree with you there. That is a huge problem, and that's something I was listening to them actually. They were addressing live on air last night. Is you know it doesn't matter what weaponry they have. It doesn't even matter what weaponry any patriot brings. The government has all the weaponry. They have the missiles. They have the bombs. They have drones. They have everything that normal humans don't have. So you can pick whatever gun you want to bring to the gunfight, and it'll still be like you're fighting with a knife.
Right.
When you're dealing with the government. So they're absolutely in a battle that they can't win, but at the same time, I believe I agree with the notion that people should stand in numbers. But I guess I'm going to be honest here, and I'm going to say this live on air. I am very I'm doubtful. I'm very doubtful of the spirit of the average American, and I say that because of this. There's been so much dumbing down of the citizenry, like through mass media, and we can go on a tangent about other different things too. But we'll just say one of the main things is mass media, mainstream media. With the mainstream media, they've controlled the narrative so well that I would say a good 90%, maybe even more, listened to and are directed by the mainstream media, which leaves a very small percentage of us that actually get down into the details of the truth. And when you think about how that affects people in their decision making process and how much time they'll give to a situation, I feel very reluctant in saying that what David's request was, for a massive number of people to appear, that request would actually be answered. I heard a lot of great, well-intentioned people that, were hoping for 2,000 people to show up, 2,500 people. I just don't see it happening. I honestly don't see it happening. I don't see 2,500 people getting up, leaving their families, going to where they know the FBI is already staged at and have been at for some time with drones to stand. And maybe I'm a bad guy for that, but
yeah,
at the same time, I'm kind of on the side of what you're saying too. Hey, we got to figure out a way to fight this without any more bloodshed, and I just don't see us, ramping up those numbers. So I'm kind of agreeing in a way with you that this does need to come to an end in some kind of way without them getting killed. It's not going to mean as much if they get killed, because 90% of the people are still going to believe the narrative put out by the mainstream media. So it would be better if they were alive.
Right, and we got to remember how this thing started. We even got to go back there. This thing started with what a lot would call a offensive maneuver, and we've always claimed that we stand on the defense. And the way it was executed was somewhat offensive. So there was a lot of divide in the Patriot movement just based on how it took place. So now here we are at the end where they're calling for 2,000, 3,000 Patriots. We got to be real and be honest. What do they expect them to do? firefight their way through roadblocks and checkpoints to get there. I mean, it's just really not realistic.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds good in theory. It really does sound good in theory. Where let's just say 10,000 people showed up and blocked the roadways and stood at the checkpoints. Well, those checkpoints are still a considerable distance away from the refuge anyway. Um, so it's not stopping the FBI's operations inside it in any kind of way anyway. Um, so it sounds great in theory, and that's what I mean. It sounds wonderful in theory, but in reality, and then when you add all the other factors that regular humans are going through every day in their regular lives, I don't see the fire inside of America because I don't see the education level of the situation matching up with what folks should know. If folks knew some of the things that we knew, if the majority of people knew what we knew, then that would be a different kind of spirit. That would be, you could see the people more energized in massive numbers. But I see people struggling to try to understand the situation and kind of pick and choose which side they want to be on regarding the situation. And I believe that's kind of where we're at. We're at this information stalemate, if you will. In this information stalemate, the only thing that can move it forward is going to be either A, their surrender, or B, unfortunately, their early demise. Um, I would rather for A, because then the story gets to continue, and whether they do time or not, they're still going to have a voice. And if they have a voice, that's a good standing point because they have the hearts and ears of enough people right now where they can help to, bring up a new revolution of patriots, a new generation of patriots.
Exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and that's it. Yeah, it's is it disheartening to have to surrender and deal with that? Absolutely. That's nothing that any of us would want to do, but the situation has been fostered from a controversial issue anyway on getting people involved. And as we have talked on the show many times, that's something we've battled as we were trying to get people to help us in place with our security buffer, and the information. I mean, it's just very difficult, and I don't want them to have an early demise. I don't want to end with any more bloodshed. And they really need to consider how they're going to, do their exit plan. And maybe that is the one gentleman who has a warrant to fall on the sword, so to say, to save the other three, if you will. Do I think that's giving up and standing down? No, because we're all out here still fighting, and we're all still going to move forward. I do know when I spoke to them, one of the gentlemen had mentioned that it may start the second Civil War. I don't believe it will. That's just my opinion. I just hope they get out of there with no bloodshed.
Yeah, yeah. I don't believe it's going to start a second civil war. But what I do believe is the government has learned a lot about its citizens in this time frame, and it's going to find new ways to create laws that would prevent this situation from happening again. I do see that happening. So we're going to have to fight those laws as they come down the pipeline too. Now, in regards to kind of what we're saying right now, that we're at kind of at an information stalemate, a physical stalemate, and there's only really a couple options moving forward. What do you make of Clive and Bunny's letter to the county and to Governor Brown and also to President Barack Obama regarding maintaining the position at the refuge and that they're pretty much not going to stand down and that the FBI should go home and the sheriff should set up a checkpoint for some time? What do you make of Clive and Bundy's approach to that?
Well, I'm really confused by it. I guess he really hasn't come out and given a public statement about that document, assuming the document is in fact authentic. you have Ammon Bundy given recorded messages to the gentleman at the refuge and he said as well, this was never meant to be an armed standoff. It's to that place now where it is an armed standoff, and he had encouraged them to go home and fight this battle on a different day. Then you have Clive and Bundy on the other side, if this document's authentic, saying that they need to stand their ground. So there's a lot of confusion to that, and I don't think that's going to help the situation very much.
Yeah, and I believe this confusion is a hallmark of so many movements that I hate to say it, and I don't want to sound like the bearer of bad news, but so many movements that have unraveled. The only good thing that I see, the shining beacon here, is that if these guys actually get out of there alive, probably by surrendering, but if they get out of there alive, this movement won't unravel. Instead, this will turn into something even more. And maybe, we'll get to see the real reason for those talent release forums, because maybe they'll use them to actually create a movie or a documentary, which would help to propel and fuel the growth of the patriot movement, for all people. So that's what I'm kind of hoping. But this confusion and this two different obviously opposing statements coming out from the same family, it's kind of it's puzzling, and it's leaving, I believe, a lot of people confused as far as what's really going on, and does anyone know what's really going on? So with that being said, what is there's been rumors, actually, some of the folks talked about it on the live show the other day, as far as PPN and the Idaho 3%ers standing down in the area and going home. You're the president of the Idaho 3%ers, so what is your take on these rumors? Are any of them true? Or have the numbers reduced as far as the guys that are on the ground for you? And they're protecting, or not really protecting anymore, but they're just offering the community support? Or what's going on with that? Or are they just rumors?
No, those are just rumors. We have in fact not stood down. The Idaho 3% or the PPN has not stood down. A lot of the times people will see us coming and going and leaving, sometimes more so on the weekends as we do rotations of manpower coming in and out. We had a huge ramp up, obviously, for the rally, so we brought in a bunch of people over the weekend for the rally, which would be more than normal. And so a lot of those people did go home. We're back down to our normal, manpower size in town there. We're still there to continue the mission. The mission's always been the same for us. We were there to be supportive to the community, create that security buffer, whether it be between the FBI, the community, the gentleman on the hill. We can't do that anymore because the perimeter and the roadblocks. But we're still there doing what we had set out to do. We're doing research. We're talking to the community in regards to, we had to shift gears a little bit this week last week because of the shooting of Lavoy, for the community. But we're still there. We're still doing what we set out to do.
Okay. Well, that clears that up very much. So, like I said, with you being the president of the Idaho 3%ers, that would, make sense for you to be the one to answer that question. So you guys are still rotating people in and out, and still helping out with the morale of the community, and obviously with the rally, you guys played a big part in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. That was put on by, the community wanted to voice their grievances, so we decided we would back them in doing that, make sure they had the support in place and voices to do that. So we called in everyone that we could. We had people from all over the place show up for that, but again, we had a huge percentage that was local residents there, and you saw the ranchers show up with their trucks and whatnot. So, in my opinion, it was very successful.
Yeah, it definitely was. Now, kind of, switching gears a little bit here. I have a question, and I'm not sure if you know like the depth of what you know about this, and how well you've been following this aspect of what's going on. I know you guys have been doing a lot of investigative work, and as far as the judge is concerned, and other folks there, and some information coming out about that. But you know, what about there's a lot of rumors also about Ammon's lawyer. There's mixed feelings about it. Some people are saying, oh, he's one of those high expensive guys, and he's going to be on the side of the government. I believe someone in his family, maybe the wife or something, was saying something in regards to we would never select a person like this. Um, do you know anything about Ammon's lawyer, or how legitimate that situation is?
I don't. I haven't followed him a whole lot because he hasn't really, other than the press conference he gave for the courthouse that day. Watching him there, it seemed like he had the right idea, where he was talking about people being locked up for exercising their First Amendment rights. He was referring to, the federal government using Facebook pictures and quotes and sayings, like they're doing. And that's what people need to understand, man. That's what they're doing now. They're going through our Facebook accounts. They're taking screenshots. I read the affidavit for the complaint on those arrests with all those individuals. Pete Santelli's a good example. He's a media guy, and they're using his own media against him to try to keep him locked up. It's just wrong.
Oh yeah, we covered that before as far as Pete Santilli too. A lot of people were wondering, well, is he an informant, a federal agent, whatever the title may be? And I said, we don't want to rush to conclusions, but I do find it mighty funny that in that affidavit, the bulk of the affidavit was all evidence from Pete Santilli's live feed, and
Yeah.
it's just so it creates that blurred line of, are you using people as informants, without their knowledge, and is this even legal, just to keep you know taking things off of Facebook or YouTube and just using this as a kind of a way to charge people? And I mean, these charges that we're talking about, and I'm sure more charges are to come. Whenever you're talking about federal charges, you're always talking about stiff, hard time. And, and when you add more charges to that, I don't know when these guys are going to see the light of day again. Do you have any idea as far as how that sentencing process is going to go? I know you can't, if you do know, some inside information, you can't tell us all of it, but, can you give us some insight as to when you think Ammon will, be able to walk free again, and possibly even put this behind him? Or do you see that maybe this is going to be heightened a little bit and there's going to be even more charges added?
Well, I think what we're going to see is so here's what we're seeing. I know I spoke to Deb Jordan today. She was in the hearing. She gave me an update. So it's firsthand account. Pete Santelli will start there. They're trying to hold him and not allow him bond. The prosecution side is actually provided evidence today of live stream media Pete did like a year ago, where he had said something about a judge, and they're saying, see how dangerous he is? He's trying to threaten a judge, and he was making comments about a judge. So you can see the stretch that they're doing there. So Pete was not given an opportunity to be released today. The judge is going to look at that further and make a decision tomorrow or the next day on that. So you can see how deep they're reaching by using media. Like, you hit the nail on the head. They're using people's informants, and the people don't even know it. It's sad.
Yeah, it really is. It's pathetic.
Right.
It's really pathetic. That's what I believe it is. I mean, it's beyond sad at this point in time. We're really turning into that 100% police state. So when you hear these elected officials get on the stage and they start talking about collecting your metadata, just say no to all of it. They don't need to collect your metadata because they're already collecting all of your data anyway. So,
Yep.
just stop saying yes. They're just, when they have conversations like that, that's only it's a reading. It's a small reading just to be able to see, okay, how many people are acceptant of our intrusion methods. And you get a lot of people that say, "Oh, it's okay, collect my data." No, it's not okay. This is what they're doing with your data. So, today it'll be this situation in Oregon. Tomorrow it'll be, what was your Facebook message to your friend? And, your private message in the inbox. So, where does this stop? And I don't think there is any stopping anywhere anytime soon, because not a lot of folks are educated on how deep this really is, and how intrusive it really is, and it just walks all over your rights as an American citizen.
And it's sad, and that's what we're seeing. And they're going to use a lot of the footage. I think try to use that against the other individuals. And it's my understanding Joe Shaughnessy was released today. Shauna Cox, has already been released.
Yeah.
The Ammon and Ritzheimer and Payne, I don't know. From what I understand, it seems like the courts kind of look at them as these big ringleaders, this big criminal spree, and it's like, why are they not given the same due process as everybody else? They have a right to bond. The judge should not be able to say, I'm not going to allow you guys to bond out until those guys come off the refuge. Well, that's being denied your constitutional right to due process based on the actions of somebody else.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and that's an illegal in itself, and that's why I'm kind of asking you and I appreciate you breaking that down for us, your opinion on how you see this going, because there's a lot of people that are thinking, and I'm kind of one of them too, that they don't want Ammon walking anywhere. They don't want him walking out of there for a very long time, and that they're going to find a way to find new charges, just like they're looking through Pete Santilli's videos from a year ago. You know how long it takes to look through some of those videos. Pete Santilli's videos are like 3 hours apiece. So if they're doing that much digging and research, I'm thinking that they're probably trying the same thing with Ammon, and whatever they're going to try to do, I know they're going to try to do it now while they actually have him behind bars, as far as what charges they can put on him, because what they probably don't want to do is make the same quote unquote mistake that they made with the Hammonds, and doing it again, and doing it in Ammon's case with him having a spotlight on him like he does right now would be a kind of serious situation. And I think also another thing that is going on, this is just my opinion, I think they don't know what to do with Ammon. I think they want to give him more charges, but I think that he's garnished so much support now that they know any small thing that they do can send this completely in the wrong direction. And
I agree. That's the wild card is the Patriot movement. With Ammon.
Yes.
What are the rest of the Patriots going to do? Why is there still Patriots posted up in town? It's just the wild card. They just don't know what to do.
Yeah, I think that this is the situation is they have all of these tactical exercises and all of these things that they do to prepare and say, hey, if the people uprise, this is we'll bring out this reinforced vehicle and this squad and this kind of ammunition, but what they really don't understand is, in this new interconnected community that we live in, like how we're doing a live stream right now, we don't need any kind of radio broadcast station, we have our own. We can reach people at the speed of light, literally. And with that being said, I don't think they've accounted properly for our resolve in doing so. It's because there's really people out there that they want freedom, they want change, they want justice, they want all of these things, and they want them now. And they're looking for any way that they can connect with other people that want the same things. And the algorithms on Facebook and YouTube and Google, they're all changing to try to keep people in their little bubbles and to minimize their voice. But people are finding different ways and means to reach out. And I believe that what's happening at the refuge has been, if you will, a meeting ground of many different minds and factions to come and say, hey, wait, we get this. We understand this. Initially, folks were standing up for the Hammonds, and the land. And then it kind of changed into folks standing up more for the land. And, unfortunately, it's now transitioned into folks standing up for the void. And, you have a meeting ground now at the refuge of all of these different causes. And I believe that with this interconnected environment that we live in, and so many people have been sucked into this situation now, it really has kind of started its own new movement, a new face to the movement by itself. So they should be very concerned, because anything they do regarding that situation is going to be very closely watched, and it's going to be reacted to.
Well, and you're right. And the other thing too is what they aren't prepared for, and I don't think they quite can wrap their head around it. What type of diversity and type of people are in the movement now? You have
Absolutely.
law enforcement officers, military, prior, current, vets. You have doctors, lawyers. You have, ranchers, farmers. You name it. They're in the movement now.
Just think about me and you.
What's that?
I said, if you just think about me and you, you're dealing with a black veteran talking to a white former cop.
Exactly, and they don't know how to deal with that. I mean, that's the unknown. Before, when you said, "Well, I'm a patriot," people think of like some guy in a Chevy pickup truck with a Confederate and American flag flying off the back. Well, you know what? We have those. That's great. We welcome that. But we also have people like you and I and doctors, lawyers. It's so diverse now.
And then also, we have to give a shout out to this. Out of all those diverse groups of people, then you have the most diverse of diverse groups of people on the planet, Anonymous. You have the support of all of us. So with that being said, I really don't think the United States government knows how to answer that, because they know even within all the sects that we have across the whole world, across the planet, any anonymous sect could wake up at any second and get pissed off and say, you know what, enough is enough. And there are some really, really, really intelligent people in Anonymous that could create change with a few keystrokes, if you know what I mean. So
absolutely. And when Anonymous came out, and said publicly that they support the operations at all levels in Burns, Oregon, that was huge.
It was huge.
I'm sure that knocked the FBI back on their toes a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have the Anons, you have the Patriots, you have the veterans, you have blacks, you have whites, you have Latinos, you have reporters, you have doctors, lawyers, policemen, ex-officers. You have so many different groups of people meeting in Burns, and they're defeating the, quote-unquote official narrative put out by mainstream media that everyone wants these people to go home, when all of these different types of people are actually coming together and they're saying, we don't agree with what happened to the Hammonds, we don't agree with the land that you're taking, and now we damn sure don't agree with the fact that you killed a man who was not brandishing a weapon, and he was clearly trying to put his hands up while he was being yelled at and shot at 9 times.
Yeah, I had a chance, to finally watch that video, because the first time we watched that video was in the hotel room while I was on your show last week. I was able to get home, get settled. I watched that video this evening on my 70-inch big screen TV, where you can really see a lot more detail.
Absolutely.
There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Lavoie was shot with his hands in the air the entire time. And when his hands come down, it was to cover a wound. You can just now that I can see it on the big TV, it's just there's no doubt in my mind. There wasn't doubt before, but I'm telling you now, there's no doubt.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, while we're actually talking about Lavoie, let's also talk about what has come out recently with this 9 millimeter. Now, there's been rumors floating around online. There's all different kinds of people that are sharing out the information. They're saying, I believe the Pacific Patriots Network has uncovered the fact that the FBI say that Lavoie did have a 9 millimeter on him, and the rumor floating around online is saying that the Pacific Patriots Network has uncovered the fact that the 9 millimeter was stolen and the serial numbers, and that it was planted there. What are your thoughts on that?
That is absolutely untrue. We have no knowledge of that 9 millimeter being stolen. We certainly would not have the serial numbers, and we did not verify and confirm that there was that whatever firearm they're referring to that was found on Lavoie's body was in fact stolen. And it's just that's not something we put out. None of us did that. We wish we had access to the serial numbers to dig deeper, but we don't have it, and it's not something we put out. That was not a statement released by us.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Yeah, I found that kind of odd too. I said, well, how'd they get the serial numbers? That's pretty good investigative work to get the serial numbers
I wish,
from the
I wish,
FBI.
so, I wish we were that good.
Yeah, that was wow. Hold on, wait a second.
My
But
opinion, we have the best intel team in the nation, but that's pretty
yeah.
good.
Oh
So
yeah, oh yeah. So that's absolutely a rumor, and I'm glad that we could actually clear that up live on air. You know, now let's not just leave that there. Let's not just leave that open in the air. There's a lot of people that feel, and have legitimate feelings about this 9 millimeter weapon. I'll tell you my feelings, and I'd like to hear yours. Lavoie carrying a 9 millimeter. The way I feel about it, I feel like it's BS. I'm just gonna keep it real with you. From what I understand, and just from the little bit that I've read, and I'm sure after I hear what you have to say, I'll learn a little bit more. But from what I understand, some of his weaponry was actually, his personal protection was left back at the refuge, and that he wasn't carrying anything that day, or if he had anything on him, it wasn't on his person. And the fact that it's a 9 millimeter in particular, eh, you know, you can look at certain people and tell certain things about them, and Lavoie just didn't seem like a 9 millimeter type of guy, and that's just my opinion. He could have had a love for all kinds of guns. I have no idea, but it just doesn't seem right for some reason. Something seems off about it. But when you're talking about the federal government and this nasty situation that they've caused, nothing seems right about any of it. So, I'm thinking that the weapon was absolutely planted. I know in the case of Quadir Felton in New Jersey, it's going on right now. You guys could look into it. Justice for Quadir Felton. He was shot and blinded by a police officer that was off duty with his own personal weapon, and that weapon was planted on his body as if Quadir had the weapon, and he was charged with that without his fingerprints ever being on the weapon. So, it's a fact that, officers plant weapons, and there's many, many other cases and examples. That's just one case that I'm working on right now. So it's not far-fetched to believe that this 9 millimeter was planted on Lavoie to pad the story a little bit and to give the FBI a little bit of justification because of the immediate backlash when they released the video. And I mean, you had people across the country literally in tears after they saw that man being shot with his hands up.
yeah, people that even know that guy, they didn't even know how, I'd like to address that in two parts, two sides, if I could. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
As far as you can't You can't shoot somebody and kill them, fatally shoot somebody, and then go up and search them and say, "Oh, there's the 9mm in his pocket. We knew it was there," even if it was legitimately in his pocket. Just because he had it and he thought he might have it doesn't give someone the license to murder somebody. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Had he pulled it out and brandished it, different story. But we saw the video clearly doesn't show that happening. Let's look at it from the other side. In what I've in my experience in law enforcement and what I've seen in my life is typically, a police officer doesn't go into a situation for the most part. There's bad ones that think different and say, "Hey, I'm going to kill this guy and plant a gun on him." What happens? It's a bad shoot. They shoot the guy, whether they jump the gun, it's a bad shoot. So they're going to look for a way to cover it up, and then they think about planting that weapon. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's typically what we see, and it's not okay. And it's not okay to think that it's okay to take a human life because they might have a firearm in their pocket. People have the right to exercise their Second Amendment right, and even if he was taken out of that vehicle at gunpoint and he had a 9mm in a shoulder holster and a holster on his hip, as long as he didn't reach for it, it does not authorize deadly force.
Absolutely.
Period.
Absolutely.
Period. And we've seen in the video, they use deadly force anyway, and it was very clear that their intent was to use deadly force before Lavoie even got out of the vehicle. Period.
Absolutely. I think we can clearly see that even, where the roadblock was set up coming around the corner, he didn't even have time to stop. So, he veered off and went into the snow and almost hit that guy. But
let's talk about that because there's a lot of people saying, well, he was trying to hit the guy. If you watch the video, you will see he's actually on the brakes. His brake lights come on before he gets to the roadblock because they set that roadblock on a corner. I stood there where that roadblock was 2 days ago. I stood in that road, and there's no way he saw that roadblock until he's about 300 feet in front of it. And if you're, doing 65, 70 miles an hour, it's hard to stop.
Well, I'm going to release something on the show that no one has talked about. And, I haven't said anything about it to anybody because I wanted to see if anybody out there would catch it. I don't think Lavoie actually swerved because he couldn't stop the vehicle. I believe the reason why Lavoie actually swerved is because before he had the chance to stop the vehicle, they were being shot at. Before Lavoie ever got out of that vehicle, bullets hit that truck. And the proof of that can be seen in the front windshield.
Where the other proof of that can be heard?
Where?
In the eyewitness testimony, both witnesses said that vehicle was taking gunfire before it hit the roadblock.
That's right, and no one is talking about that point. And if you look at the drone footage, I can't remember the exact timestamp, but you can see the bullet holes in the front window, specifically in the passenger, top left passenger area. There's quite a few of them. Now, if you just look at the natural way that the events occurred, the vehicle obviously veered off the road. It went up into the snow, and Lavoie was killed behind the vehicle to the back driver passenger side. And the shots were fired in that direction. After that, they took a position behind their vehicle and fired shots into the side of the vehicle. Okay? So the only way and the only time and the only chance that they would have had to shoot that many shots into the windshield in a tight space like that would be oncoming.
Absolutely.
So
which would actually explain when Lavoie got out of the vehicle, if he was taking gunfire into the windshield, approaching the roadblock, when he got out of the vehicle, both witnesses said he was saying, "If you want to shoot someone, shoot me." That would explain why he was saying that, because they're already shooting at them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that's something that should be thoroughly investigated because, at that point in time, there's really no reason to shoot at a person who's heading towards a roadblock that they can't get past anyway. Why shoot at them if they can't get past the roadblock in the first place? It makes no
That's actually
sense.
taught. That's what they teach you not to do in the police academy. Actually,
Yeah, it makes no sense. And if it would be a logical teaching because it makes no sense. I mean, the person is pretty much entrapped at that point. They can't go back the other way. The road's blocked off. They can't go forward. The road's blocked off. There's about 3, 4 feet of snow, on either side of the road. He's not going to drive through the snow. So there's really no reason to have ever fired a single shot. They could have all stood behind their vehicles. They could have actually got out of their vehicles and stood in the wood line and waited for him to stop at the blockade. Not a single shot needed to be fired into an oncoming vehicle. Not one.
no, and that entire thing was set up by design. It was a military tactic used. It's called an L ambush. Anyone that's been in the military would know that. Law enforcement
Hmm.
would know that. That was designed to push them into a shoot box. That was designed for them to do exactly what took place. There was
Yeah.
shooters in the woods. And for anyone that doesn't believe that, if you watch the video all the way to the end, you'll see those shooters walk out of the woods with their Kevlar helmets and helmet cams on, and they're towards the passenger driver side of the vehicle, just up in the tree line beyond where the officer took the final shot. And you'll see them walk down towards the end of the video,
Yep.
several of them. So if they weren't planning for something like that to happen, why would they have shooters on the high ground side of the highway posted there?
Yeah, already posted there. Before the initial stop, what even took place. Probably a quarter of a mile. Back a quarter of a mile, half a mile back. So, you're absolutely right, and that is the tactic. They wanted to force them into that particular zone. They did exactly that. They shot, the shots they wanted to shoot, and they had no other intentions of resolving it peacefully without firing a shot. The main purpose was to shoot them, and I'm sure the
Yep.
main purpose was to kill them, but they realized, hey, wait, we can't kill everybody because their drone footage is up there. So now we're in a position where we have to take these people in because it's going to look like we murdered them.
And if you look at the drone footage, when it shows the officers lined up along the backside of the silver police truck, and they keep popping out and shooting rounds at the passenger side of the vehicle. If you watch that closely, you'll see what I'm going to assume to be a commanding officer of some sort. He comes running over to that guy who's taking those shots. He's coming out, he's shooting, he's going back behind the truck, coming out, shooting, going back behind the truck for cover. The commanding officer runs over, and you can see him yelling at him, and he starts pointing up in the sky towards the drone. And I took that as, hey, what are you doing? This is all being videotaped above head.
Yeah, yeah,
And he does it three
absolutely.
times. He does it 3 times.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's they know, they know that this is listen, they're taking this footage, and their main purpose of them to use this footage is twofold, in my opinion. They want to prove to the public that they're doing their job, and they'll use the narrative of protecting the American people, um, and two, they want to use it for, I guess you could say, a scare tactic. To also to put into that imagery into the minds of American patriots and just all kinds of people around the country that would want to stand up for their rights and say, "This is what'll happen to you." And it's really sad and it's really unfortunate, but those who are awake and those who that understand their rights and those who don't like being controlled by a puppet government, they easily see through these tactics and they say, no, I'm not going to submit. No, I'm not going to see your false narrative that you want me to see, because my eyes see what's truly happening. My eyes see that this man got out and he had his hands up and he was gunned down with 9 shots. My eyes see that they were, being shot at before they even came to the roadblock. Um, so I think the battle really is, people have to believe their eyes, believe your heart, believe what you actually see, instead of, trying to be a part of the in crowd of the mainstream media and say, oh no, those guys are terrorists, and they're entitled white privileged people, and they those guys they shouldn't be sticking up for their rights. They're not really sticking up for their rights because they receive welfare from the government. It's not about any of that. It's really about rights, and it's about understanding the education of this country and understanding the legal documents, starting with the Constitution.
Yeah, and you can even look at it this way. You know, if you really think about it, they kind of had to make their point the way they did to the Patriot community because they've been stood down 3 times in other operations by Patriots. And I think this time, in their mind, they weren't going to let us win. They weren't going to let us back them down like we did at Bundy Ranch, Sugar Pine Mine, and in Montana when they wanted to engage. We backed them down, and we won those battles by getting them into court with due process. And I think this time they weren't going to allow that to happen. I believe that they ended it the way they did to put a thumb in the eye of the Patriot community.
Yeah, yeah, and where there was already a lot of division starting to bubble up, and I think fortunately their plans are also backfiring in their face because they released that video very quickly. I mean, extremely fast, and
Right.
kind of unprecedented how fast they released it. To be honest with you, and in releasing that video, I'm sure that they had like I said, those 2 things that I just went over. I'm sure that they had their goals in mind as far as what that was going to do. And I believe it's starting to backfire because those who are awake, they've combined 2 things together. They've seen the video, and now they're watching the live stream of the 4 individuals that are still left at the refuge. And they're putting, 2 and 2 together. And one thing I could say about Americans, because we love money, is people are still good at math. They're saying, wait a second, this 2 and 2 is not adding up. I'm listening to the mainstream media, but I saw the video with my own eyes. I believe my heart, I believe my eyes, and I'm listening to the words of the people at the refuge. What is the mainstream media talking about? So I think it's really starting to backfire in their face, of them wanting to try to stick a thumb into the movement and saying, you're not going to get us this time. We got you, and this is what we're going to do to more of you. I believe that people are saying, no, you're not. No, you're not. We're
Yep.
going to stand up, and we're not going to allow this to happen. And furthermore, we're not going to forget.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We had a brother that did ultimately pay the ultimate sacrifice, but that's just going to fire us up more. That's going to push us harder. And I think they're going to try to squash the Patriot movement and community. I can't remember who it was exactly, but said that we were a virus. Do you remember when that was said? We were a virus. Someone in the government and the federal government. You have Governor Kate Brown. The blood of this is on her hands, by the way, in my opinion. She's the one that called for swift and just action by the FBI. Well, they sure took it, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah, and we actually talked about that on our show. It's just tremendous, and I put out a video on my YouTube channel about it as well. I said now that people didn't really enjoy the direction that I took it, but I'll say it here live on air, and I don't mind saying it. When Barack Obama came into office, he was very clear to the homosexual community what his agenda was. He wanted to be all for them, and that's what he's done. He's stood up to his promises for them.
Hmm.
In saying that, Governor Kate Brown is the first openly bisexual person to hold that kind of office in this country, and and should she actually be appointed to that position, she's actually, I believe, being elected into that position now because the person that was there, I don't know, some corruption was going on or something. But if she really gets that position, she'll be the first openly bisexual person, in that kind of role of government, in the United States. And you can go to the Wikipedia page just to read that about her. She has a husband and, I believe, 2 children. Now, with that being said, if you combine that with Obama's agenda and who she is as a person, and you combine that also with the fact of, how impassioned she was as far as having the federal government Waco, the people at the refuge. I put out the YouTube just pretty much saying this call that she put out will be answered. I promise you that Obama will answer that call and something will happen. And what? It's not even a week later, and Lavoy was killed.
Right. Well, and I also want to be very clear that leadership of the PPN went to Governor Kate Brown's office shortly after this entire thing started and asked her to take a stand for her state, send a mediator over there, send somebody over there to step in on behalf of the state that this is happening in and come to a peaceful resolution to hear these people. She said that she has her public safety officer over in Burns, and that public safety officer must have just been sitting in that building with the rest of the feds over there on the middle school they took over and did absolutely nothing because it still ended in violence. The only people that exercised violence in this entire Occupy was the government.
Yeah, that is a very resonating fact, and a lot of folks don't want to, focus on that. A lot of folks that want to deny this whole situation. You call people terrorists, but you're really calling them terrorists because of their ideas and their beliefs. Because they haven't fired a single shot, they've committed no violence. So, it's almost like the American public is agreeing that, you can now be a terrorist because you stand up for what you believe is right. You stand up for the Constitution. They're almost in complete symmetry, completely lined up, completely symmetrical with the thought process of the government, and as far as what their domestic terrorism policy is. And it's a little scary because, you don't want the American public to see our freedoms the same way this rogue government sees our freedoms. We want the American public to see the freedoms as they should have them. And when it gets very frustrating when you have to argue with people that are using the logic of the oppressor. And, they don't even understand that they're using the logic of the oppressor because they don't understand what their own rights are.
Right. No, you're right. And it was Senators Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley who said that patriots are a virus. But here's what I find interesting. They want to call us patriots a virus and we must be stopped. However, I find it more offensive when I go to fuel up my vehicle in Burns, Oregon, and I'm doing so next to two Bearcats and an MRAP. I feel like it was in Afghanistan.
Yeah, see, there's no reason for that show of force. Especially there's 4 people up there.
Yeah, and that's where tying to what you were just saying, that's the oppression that we're going to start seeing. That's oppression. That's tyranny. When you're fueling up next to MRAPs and Bearcats on our soil in the little town of Burns, Oregon, that's oppression.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, we have absolutely covered a lot. We've, that's a whole hour's worth of, information we've covered. From the rally to, David Fry, his live stream last night, Ammon's lawyer. What else did we cover? We cleared up those rumors as far as the 3%ers and the PPN standing down. We know that you guys are still active in the community there. We've covered some of the rumors about the Lavoy 9mm and I think cleared up some things about that and given our opinions. Is there anything else that you can think of that we can give, the listeners to get updated on, or, anything that you would like them to know, any kind of upcoming rallies, or what's the next step from here?
Well, there is another rumor that I'd like to address. I know we did on the last time, but I'd like to clear the air again.
Okay.
And there's some more information that's come out from the eyewitnesses. We're getting heavily attacked on, you guys should have been there, PPN 3%, or whoever. The Patriots should have been there to stop this from happening. Some inside information came out from the eyewitnesses that there was an individual that was very set on making sure that those all those leadership people from up at the refuge traveled in those two vehicles and did not send a scout vehicle like they normally do, did not communicate with anyone else. There's very few people that knew they were actually leaving and heading out. And I believe that was done by design so they could be picked up from whatever inside information was feeding that. So, again, as the details come out, we're learning that there's no reason to be pointing fingers. Obviously, there was an informant in place. It was said actually in open court late last week, that the information they received from the informant, they didn't say who it was, but the prosecuting attorney said the information that he received from the informant at the refuge. So we know that there was an informant in there. And God knows we would move mountains for those men and Lavoy, and we would have been there if we could have. We just didn't know they were there, and we can't be somewhere we don't know that we need to be. So I just want to get that out.
Yeah, and folks need to realize it. Although speculation is, well, people knew they were going to a meeting. Well, you don't know what time, you don't know what road, if you're not in communication about exactly those critical things, the time and the route. So if you're not in communication about those things, then you can't protect that area, or the convoy of people that were traveling. So it's very unfortunate that the situation unraveled the way it did. But I think we've kind of known all along that there's been more than one informant that's been up at the ranch, and any kind of operation that is going on where people are standing up to face the government. Expect it, guys. Expect it. There's going to be informants involved. That's what they do. They will pick, anybody that looks like the people that are standing up to protest. If you look like those folks, well, guess what? You're hired for the job. Go in there, get some information, bring us back the intel. And that's how this thing works. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of informants on the books for the federal government. And they're under all kinds of organizations. It's not just one organization. They're under all the organizations, especially the police officers.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I was a law enforcement officer. I worked with informants all the time. We paid them. We had lots of them, and we paid them.
Yes, yes, and same thing is going to hold true for this situation for the guys and girls that were up at the refuge. There's unfortunately, this is a sad reality of it, but America, you just have to get used to it. There's people out there that are always going to be informants that don't mind taking a paycheck to sell you out. That's how America works, and it's a sad reality, but it is, nonetheless a reality.
Absolutely.
Well, Brandon, is there any other information that you can give us, or anything you want to clear up before you give us your plug and let us know where we can find you online?
There's going to be a memorial gathering in Burns, Oregon, Friday at 1 o'clock. I believe they're meeting at the Safeway area at 1 o'clock, and they're gonna motorcade on up to the memorial location where he was shot on the highway up there, and that's going to be in Burns on Friday at 1 o'clock.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I know you sent me some pictures from the memorial location from when you guys went up there with some of the leadership, and those were definitely some moving pictures to see what they've created there for Lavoy. And I hope that when you guys go back up there again on Friday, make sure you take a lot of pictures, and we'll be sure to share those pictures out as well, because folks just need to see it. They need to see the support that's really there. They need to see that there are people that really care, that are really standing up and saying, wait, we're not going to listen to this mainstream media. We're paying $150 a month, $200 a month to these cable companies for them to lie to us every single day. We're paying for our own brainwashing. We need to start listening to the folks that are on the ground. So I think people are going to start coming around. The more you guys stand up, the more you guys deliver that media, such as what we're doing here with the All Rights Matter show and Anon Radio Live. Delivering that truth to people, and whether it be through videos or the pictures that, like I said, I hope you guys will take on Friday. But people need to see visual representations of that so they can know the truth for themselves, so they're not listening to some $20 million a year paid celebrity news anchor telling them that there's terrorists at the refuge. Folks need to get out of that, and they need to see the truth. So I'll be looking forward to getting some more photos from you on Friday regarding the obvious massive turnout that's going to be there.
Absolutely, we'll make sure we get those over to you.
Okay, and Brandon, let the listeners know, where can they find more information about you, your website, Facebook, any information, how can we find you?
Our Facebook page is www.iii%idaho.org, and there is a place there you can get information. We're trying to keep that updated. It's been tough with how busy everyone's been and being involved over there. There's also a spot there where you can donate to us, continue to do what we do. All that goes towards, any donations we get goes towards people's fuel, food, lodging, things like that, to keep us doing what we do. All of our members are volunteers and do that on their own time, so we at least try to cover those expenses. So every little bit helps, whether it's $5, $20, whatever, it all adds up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, again, we'll make sure that we share that link out as well. And, Brandon, you've given so much. I want to take the time to say this before we close. You've given so much as far as your time is concerned here on air, your time on the ground, and, I know you have a family. I just want to let you know, and all of the listeners of the All Rights Matter show and Anon Radio Live, we all want to let you know that we thank you. We appreciate the efforts that your organization, Idaho 3 Percenters, is putting out there. We thank you for combining those efforts with the rest of the partners in the Pacific Patriots Network. We just thank you for staying dedicated, focused, and committed, even through all the confusing times and through all the division that's happened. You've stayed, steady. And anybody that's followed the interviews, from day one, now we've had 6, 7, 8, interviews now. You've always remained steady. You've always remained in the, pretty much in the center of the story, not too far left, not too far right, but focused on what this is really all about. So we want to thank you for that, publicly, and let you know that, you've been a tremendous asset to our listeners and understanding the truth on the ground. And because of that, a lot of our listeners have also expressed to us how they're actually praying for you guys, because they know that your voice is also, look, this is an information war. They're trying to win the information battle. And they know that your voice is a positive voice in that area. They know that your voice is a powerful voice in that area, and that thousands and thousands of people through, have listened to this on YouTube and listened to this live. Those prayers are for your protection and, for God's grace, that you would remain in a comfortable, good position to continue on the battle and continue on the investigating and fighting this on the proper level. So thank you, brother, and make sure you stay safe.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone out there. I appreciate it. And I will continue to do what we do, and I won't give up. That's my promise to everybody.
All right, Brandon. Well, with that being said, we thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Anon Radio Live and the All Rights Matter show. Make sure you tune in on Wednesdays from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. We'll be discussing all kinds of just any kind of topics that are out there. We're going to actually start having you guys call in soon to jump on air with me to ask your questions live. So, make sure you tune in to Anon Radio Live and All Rights Matter show. Again, we want to thank Brandon Curtis for coming on again from the Idaho 3 Percenters and giving us his take of everything that's going on the ground and the actual real events as they're occurring before any of this is hitting mainstream media, and if any of it is hitting mainstream media. So you're getting the facts right here. Make sure you go to our Facebook fan page for Anon Radio Live. Give us a like there. Make sure you find the All Rights Matter show. Give us a thumbs up there. And if you want to connect with me, you can find my personal fan page, Who is Sincere, on Facebook, and you can connect with me that way. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you go to the description section right below this video and you download the app. Make sure you get our app on your cell phone, because you will get an immediate update when we go live with special guests such as Brandon with breaking news reports from the ground. So that's very important to have. Again, Brandon, you make sure you have yourself a good night, and everybody out there that's listening, you have a good, safe night too, and make sure you stay tuned in. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.